Reimagining Success, episode 202. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. Hello there. This is Anna Lundberg speaking, and this week we have another celebration. So we were celebrating 200 episodes on the podcast not that long ago, and now we're celebrating 4 years since the publication of my book, Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5. So another self-indulgent episode reflecting on my evolution, on what's happened since the book, but also highlighting stories, the continued stories that have lived on beyond a book of some of the wonderful people who are in the book. So do check out Instagram in particular, I think. So you can follow me at Anna S.E. Lundberg. We'll be sharing insights and perspectives from some of the people in my book. So the book, let me read the blurb on the back. Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5. After interviewing 50 people who have left the Corporate 9 to 5 to forge their own path, Anna Lundberg has collected their stories in a book that will inspire you with the possibilities that are out there and reassure you that you're not alone in looking for an alternative. Although the people interviewed all share the experience of leaving a full-time job to pursue something different, that something different has manifested itself in varying ways. The stories include those who've moved into a different sector, gone freelance, launched their own business, created a portfolio career, or taken a leap of faith, not yet knowing what the next step would be. As well as the stories themselves, Anna shares additional perspective from her own experience of leaving her corporate job in 2013 and also coaching her clients through the process, drawing out key insights to help you create your own career transition story. Now, looking at my little bio, actually, it's still very much accurate. The photo is a little bit dated, but apart from that, it more or less holds up. Now, if you know me at all, if you've been part of my community, you'll know that I often talk about my passion and, if I can be so bold as to say, my talent for writing. And writing is always something I try to focus on as much as possible in my business. This book was a particularly special one for me because it became something physical I could hold in my hands, really something that I'd written that I could say I'm an author of. It gave me a platform for speaking on podcasts, and it fed into and still does feed into my business incubator program, what is now my business incubator. At the time, it was actually, I don't want to say an easy fix, but it was a bit of a cheat perhaps, because I collected these stories together. So although it is, let's see, it is 273 pages with the index 277 odd, let's say. No, there's a bit of an less than 300 pages, but a lot. It feels like a substantial book, right? Most of that is stories. And I've added my perspective. There's an intro, there's an introduction to each section, and a one step at the end, and so on. I was really relying on these wonderful people who I've been interviewing over the years. Now, it started out as an interview series on my blog. It then became something that I also filmed on video via call rather than just having people's answers on a Word document. And relatively recently, I've turned it into the monthly podcast episode. So at the end of each month, you get the Escaping the 9 to 5 interview with somebody. But it was a blog that I started, I think 2014 was the first interview. So some of the stories in the book actually are from 2014-15. And what's interesting, and I hope important to hear, or I believe, I assert it is important for you to hear, is that so much has changed for so many of these people, and for some people, not so much has changed. In good ways, in bad ways, in professional ways, in personal ways. I've had a couple of people in the book who I know have gone back to corporate jobs, 1 or 2 out of necessity perhaps, 1 or 2 out of realising that that's what they really wanted to do. And that's okay, that's wonderful. In fact, we're celebrating that. I hope you get the message from me that we're not talking about quitting your job being the only solution. In fact, it probably is never the solution. The fact that you have quit your job once doesn't mean that you can't have another job. People find their dream roles. Now, there are many people who I'd say are tempted back into taking a job simply because they haven't given themselves a shot. They've maybe given up too soon. They've had one idea, and then when it turned out harder than they thought it would, they've just given up and gone back. Perhaps they've missed having a team and felt a bit alone, and instead of surrounding themselves then with peers and communities and masterminds and getting the support they needed, they have then again chosen to go back to the more familiar corporate environment. So never any judgment, but please know, if you are in that process and sometimes tempted back and so on, A, it's perfectly okay if that's what you want to do, but make the decision intentionally. And B, please make sure that you feel like you have tried everything. People often say, I've done everything, but believe me, you haven't. If it's not working, you haven't tried everything. It's up to you to decide when you stop trying. It's certainly up to you to decide how much work you want to put in and pivot and try different things. But if you want to make this work, you can. Now, over on Instagram, as I said, I will be sharing some snapshots. I don't have them all yet, so I can't tell you too much, but just a quick dip into the book. I had Kelly Roach, who I had on the podcast. I was actually working with her as my business coach some years ago. I have sometimes shared very briefly the insight about her journey, because when I was working with her, I was working one-to-one and in a group program. She was certainly successful, but I think she was quite a best kept secret, as some people might recognize. And she is now, her coaching company is one of the top 500 fastest growing private companies in America. She's won lots of awards. She's got a huge team of, 40 people now. She has lots of people appearing on videos and running her programs for her. She's absolutely on fire. She has another business which she runs with a co-founder. She contributes to a charitable foundation. And most importantly, perhaps, she's made changes personally. She's always talked about putting family first. She's moved with her husband and daughter to the sea, a little bit like myself, although I'm not the fastest growing company in America, I can guarantee. And so she's really demonstrated this incredible success. I like to share her as an example, both as something that I don't aspire to personally, and I hold my hand up there because I don't want a team of 40, 50 people, at least not right now, but also because she's always worked really hard and diligently behind the scenes. And now I really see that that's paid off. I may have shared in the past Dory Clark's book, The Long Game. If you're familiar with Dory Clark, she's quite a thought leader in America in the space of personal branding and career pivots, actually. And she talks about how she worked, 5-6 years behind the scenes, writing hundreds of articles and so on, losing book deals, losing her book agent, until suddenly she broke through and her success was exponential. And I think this is another case with Kelly Roach of that happening. Another one of my favourites is Ruth Cudsey. Ruth, already when I spoke to her the second time, a few years after her initial interview, a lot has changed in terms of pivoting in her coaching business. But now she's running two businesses. So she does her original coaching business. She's also running a training business called Optimus Coach Academy, where she trains people to be ICF accredited coaches. But again, most importantly, when she shared her insight with me, they've moved to their dream house, they've relocated to a different area of London, and they live close to a forest, and they really prioritise work-life balance. So, huge professional success, we can't deny that, but also importantly, perhaps more importantly, prioritising what really matters. I never want anyone to feel bad, and including me, let's say this, I'll be vulnerable here, about not having launched 3 businesses and charities and moved to your dream house and so on, right? That's not what it's about. So please don't think that there's that pressure. I hope you can see these stories as inspiring, and I certainly do. A little push to perhaps be a bit more ambitious and audacious in your goals, also to reflect on what is really important to you. In terms of my own evolution, I think I certainly shared a couple of episodes ago on the 200th episode a little bit about my evolution and so on. It is very much consistent. Certainly 4 years ago when I published this book and I started the series, as I said, in 2014, I still work in much the same area. I have the same foundations of my individual coaching and business coaching, but group coaching rather, but I've up-leveled to in many aspects, right? So the websites look much more professional, the lead magnets, the funnels, the video workshops, everything just feels much easier. It's all very much a rhythm for me, creating content and so on. Now, of course, it's not easy, but things that seemed completely unthinkable. In fact, when this book came out, I hadn't even launched the podcast. And now I've done 4 years almost of the podcast, right? I've done over 200 episodes. I have had articles published in the press. Maybe not as many as I would have liked, but hey, I've had some in physical magazines. I've had plenty in online publications. I've been on lots of different podcasts. I have spoken on stage, again, perhaps not so much, but out of choice mainly. partly also, of course, pandemic and young children getting a little bit in the way, but that's something that I can focus on more in the future. Really thinking about how that definition of success evolves, right, over these months and years for everybody. Because when I quit in 2013, I quit my corporate marketing job. I was single. I wanted the freedom. I wanted to be a digital nomad, and I wanted to make money blogging. And I was very naive. So there will, in fact, be an episode on this very, very soon. But what I want you to think about is being really audacious and ambitious and idealistic in your big dream and goal, and then be pragmatic and flexible in how you get there. So there can be multiple ways of getting to your bigger goal, right? And yes, the goal may evolve too. As I said, being single and carefree in 2013, traveling 2015, 16, before I met Luke, really, I want to say living my best life, really, spending a lot of money, hot air ballooning and road tripping and paddleboarding and all sorts, having amazing adventures and meeting people and having a lot of fun, while dabbling in my business. That, of course, shifted when you become part of a relationship, when I wanted to take my business more seriously and I really hunkered down and try to get more systematic in terms of how I was sending emails and showing up on social media and so on. Now I've got to the point, of course, where I'm showing up very consistently, and it's about then perhaps selling more or growing more or getting in front of new audiences. Having children, as you can imagine, has really shifted, I wouldn't say my values, but certainly what I'm prioritizing, what's important. I may have shared before that one of my colleagues, coach colleagues, has said, you know what, Anna, this is not our season. She said, this is not my season for necessarily having this success that some of these others have had. Perhaps when you've got 2 kids under 2, that's not the moment when you're also going to be up on the TED stage and so on. Maybe it is, but perhaps it's not, and that's a choice you get to make. The point, again, is getting clear on your definition of success, allowing that to evolve, but also holding on to the bigger vision and then being flexible in how you get there. So for me, yes, I have frustrations and certainly unfulfilled ambitions, but I feel pretty at peace with where I am. I really try to be present and focused on being with the kids when I'm with them, on, you know, I've been working with a personal trainer and nutritionist. I've shared that before. Lost quite a bit of weight the last few years after having the children. I'm aiming to run a half marathon, publishing my next book. I am focusing on things that are more interesting, I think, and more important than perhaps necessarily only the traditional career path, even as it stands outside of the 9 to 5, right? There are still traditional milestones and so on, and there's still this definition of success that is accepted in the business world too, in terms of being a best-selling author and having thousands and thousands of followers and scaling your 7-8 figure business and so on. And if that's not meaningful to you, or at least if there are other things that are more important, that's okay. Really allowing yourself to focus on what's important to you and being clear on that. So all this to say that 4 years since the book came out, I would have loved to have published more books in the meantime, but hopefully my next book will be out very, very soon, and I'll keep up the pace a bit more in the coming years, having come out of the youngest children phase as well as the pandemic, of course. I will continue to evolve both what I'm focusing on, I suppose, big picture. I am looking more at in-person events, perhaps, stepping up my game in terms of speaking, getting out my comfort zone, as I always recommend that you do. So I'm trying to role model that as well. It's easy even for me to get into my comfort zone of just pumping out these episodes and I'll do another post on LinkedIn and so on, and just staying with what I've been doing. So it's interesting to challenge yourself sometimes to mix things up and to work with a different type of client and to try a different messaging and try a different format and less social media perhaps and more in person, more conversations with people and so on. So I'm certainly continuing to evolve and reflect on how I'm getting to my bigger picture vision. And I will be spending more time on that, of course, as the year ends, because then it's this wonderful time when we get to create vision boards and business strategies and plans and all sorts for the next year, for 2023. But again, I'd love for you to, of course, head on over to Amazon to find the Kindle or paperback or hardback if you'd like a really beautiful high-end edition of Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5. You can search Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5 and you'll find that, or you can go to leavingthecorporate9to5.com and you find the book. Of course, if you have read it, if you've got value from it, I would love for you to leave a review, because that's so helpful for other people to find the book as well. and looking out for the next book, which will be outside of the 9 to 5. And in fact, that's the main message of today that I wanted to get across. That's been my main lesson and something I keep pushing with my clients and my community. And I'll repeat here as well. The main shift for me is that certainly when I started the interviews in this book and when I wrote the book, Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5, it was about that moment. The picture on the front is the woman with the balloon floating out of the cage. And it was that moment of I quit. Indeed, one whole section of the book was around taking that leap of faith. And that's what I did, not really knowing what you wanted to do or not quite yet knowing what was next, right? And then creating it once you've left. There are people in there who have created a portfolio career, lots of different ideas and going on and evolving since then as well. Launching your own business, perhaps they have grown. Now looking and having had a bit of a nosy on some of these people's LinkedIn pages and so on, some are absolutely in the same business, continuing in the same vein, growing the same business. Some have launched a second business. Some have gone, as I said, to another full-time job, maybe making shifts in their work-life balance and other priorities. And some would have changed entirely to a different business. And all of those paths are absolutely okay. Maybe driven by different things, as I said, maybe financial necessity, maybe not having the clarity on what they actually wanted, maybe no assumptions at all. But of course, there are fears, there are concerns, there are challenges that we come across. And this is the key message I always push now. It's about ongoing resilience to cope with those ups and downs that will continue in your business. As you raise the bar, as you challenge yourself at a higher level, you will find some things that used to be crazy, complicated and scary, super easy and part of your natural rhythm and routine, and other things become difficult, right? And that's why I talk about the 5 pillars of building your life outside the 9 to 5, because it's not only about that moment when you say, I quit. It's not about that at all, in fact. It's about getting the clarity on your perhaps evolving definition of success. It's working on shifting those beliefs and the mindset. It's on choosing the right business model. And I use that loosely to cover portfolio career, part-time work, multiple businesses, and so on, freelancing. And it is about stepping out of your comfort zone, becoming more present as a thought leader, expert, personal brand. And above all of these, I think, have in common this focus on work-life integration, on managing the business alongside children or their well-being and making sure they don't burn out again, because some of the stories in the books are unfortunately rooted in burnout and work and so on. So it's not only about the moment of quitting, it's not about that at all. In fact, it is about reimagining success, redesigning what work-life integration looks like for you, and being flexible as to how you get there. So again, grab the book, Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5. If you don't already have it, do write a review if you have read it and it's been useful. And here's to the success of everybody in the book. Thank you, of course, to all of you who were part of the book at the time and have supported me since. And here's to many more. Of course, I am continuing the series on the podcast. So since 2018, you've got another 4 years worth of interviews on reimaginingsuccesspodcast.com, on the blog, on the website. So do read those as well. And every success to all of you as you pursue your own stories of leaving the corporate 9 to 5. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. You can find my book, Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5, Stories from People Who've Done It and How You Can Too, in paperback and Kindle format on your local Amazon site. I hope it gives you both inspiration and concrete tips on how you can craft your own alternative career path. Happy reading!